Yo,
Yo, yo, what's up, Jordan?
how's it going, man?
Going good, going good. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Thanks for being flexible with the time.
Of course, dude. I'm stoked that you're on here. I'm stoked to talk about you and your journey. Um, we are recording, so basically everything is live, ready to go if you're cool with that. And we can just dig right into it.
Yeah, sweet, man. Let's do it.
Sick. All right, so I'll start now. All right. What's going on, everybody? Satoshi's mom here. This is episode 2 of In It 5, The Art. I'm here with Jordan Lyall. Jordan, am I saying your last name correctly, by the way?
Yeah, Lyall.
Nice, Jordan Lyall. Awesome, man. I'm stoked to dig in with you because I think that I've been following you for a while, and I know that you're someone who's been consistently involved and pushing this space forward for a while. So I want to hear about like who you are and who your story is, or what your story is. And I'm just stoked to have you on, man. So welcome to the pod, and thanks for being here.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Congrats on the new show. I yeah, man. I'm just a dude that just loves the space, loves the tech, loves the people. I've been building in blockchain for a long time now, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to have fun building. And I just kind of like to get my hands dirty across the board, from investing and collecting and building and, on the art side, just having fun in this space.
Yeah, man. I love the space too. I've been a part since 2021, like super late 2020, got into crypto. I'm curious, when did you get into NFTs? Like, how did you get started with NFTs and crypto?
Yeah. I'm old, so I've been here a while. So I first discovered Bitcoin in like 2013, 2014. I bought one Bitcoin around 120 bucks, and I held on
Nice.
to it for a while, and it was interesting, and a longtime product builder and entrepreneur and founder guy, consumer mobile startup guy. Um, and so I kind of had my eye on crypto. Was building some interesting like side projects and stuff around Bitcoin and Stellar and XRP back in the day, like 2014. Um, but it wasn't really until Ethereum came around and I really started paying attention in 2017, where I was like, okay, this is different. This is a game changer. There's more to this tech than just sending, value, sending money to your friends, right? There's actually things you can do on the blockchain with smart contracts. So I started really paying attention then. My first NFT was CryptoKitties at the end of 2017. That's actually what prompted me to install MetaMask. Was I saw that these CryptoKitties were a thing, and they're clogging up the Ethereum network at the time, and it was like, what are these things? So I jumped in, and I was just totally fascinated that now you could actually put assets outside of money. You can create things. You can lend your creativity. You can create assets and art and collectibles, and that really just blew my mind. So as someone that's been building, in Web 2, consumer mobile, consumer social apps and things, it really was interesting to me. So at that point, I just decided to, I got to make this my full-time thing, or else I'd be up nights and weekends anyways. So I went full-time into crypto early 2018, like February of 2018. So that makes it 6+ years now that I've been, all in on crypto, and first started working at an early DeFi company. We didn't call it DeFi back then, but we were doing some decentralized exchange trading. I was head of product. The startup got acquired by Coinbase. Um, I went to Consensus, the big uh, blockchain company founded by one of the founders of Ethereum.
Mhm.
Went to Consensus and ran a couple product teams. I was there for a few years. Had a great time building, the outset of DeFi. And then DeFi Summer, played a big role there and was having a lot of fun. I launched a collection of my own, a project of my own with some other guys. An early NFT project called Meme. Don't buy Meme. Now there's a bunch of meme uh, projects that call themselves Meme, but we were kind of one of the first to call ourselves the Meme Project, and it was my first kind of foray into building for NFTs. Instead of staking, um, instead of like these DeFi primitives for governance tokens, you could actually farm for NFTs. So this was back in 2020. So I've been building almost 4 years in NFTs now. So ever since then, I just love working with artists. I love the creativity. We're now using this tech not just for financial reasons, but we're actually just, we're allowing these artists to create and flourish and um, you know earn a living. So it was really exciting that we can now apply this tech, and I can apply my experience to working with artists. So I've been working with artists and building NFT related projects ever since. Personally as a collector, I was able to collect some early art blocks pieces like Chromie Squiggles. I've got a pretty solid collection. I've got CryptoPunk, was fairly early there. And so I've just become fascinated with this stuff. And after launching the Meme Project, I went on to found a company called Nifties.com. We partnered with Warner Brothers and Sony, and we did some big movie properties like The Matrix and Spider-Man and a bunch of cool movies that were coming out. So it was interesting to then apply this tech to like giant properties like The Matrix. So we launched a bunch of NFTs there. And then more recently, in the last couple of years, I've been kind of doing my own thing. The company's called Venture Punk, and the goal is to just find some fun experimental things that we can do with NFTs and with Web3, and just fun experimental projects and collections and platforms. So for the last year or so, we've been focused on um, project we launched called Prohibition. So prohibition.art. When we initially launched, it was generative art, open platform for generative art on the Arbitrum chain. And over the last couple months, we've been doing some more additions on the base chain. So it's all about just kind of being experimental, all with kind of this thread of making it more accessible, both for artists to participate and collectors to get involved. So yeah, I mean, that's it, man. Just trying to have fun building, build with like the angle of making it more accessible and approachable for many others to join this space. And yeah, man, having a blast.
Wow, man, that's quite the
Been a long time,
story. I
man.
mean, that's amazing. That's sick, dude. Like buying a Bitcoin for 100 something bucks. I mean, damn, that's definitely early. And I
Yeah,
was gonna ask as well, like about the punk. So, like, your collection, it seems super dope. I haven't taken a look myself, but like, I know you've got the punk obviously as your profile pic, but you said you were early to Squiggles and other art blocks pieces. Um, and also CryptoKitties. So like you started collecting NFTs in 2017, is that right?
yep, yeah, with crypto kitty.
And so that's what kind of brought you down the rabbit hole with all this other experience that you have with like more like Web 2 businesses, I guess, if I'm hearing that correctly. And then you basically just went completely all in, just dove in. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, that's it, man. That's kind of my personality, is just to dive in, find something that
Love it.
interests me. I really only like building things that I am excited about, right? Like I couldn't build like a B2B SaaS company or something like that. I needed I need to be build. I need to spend my working hours, you know, surrounded by people who are excited about the stuff as I am around a topic that I find exciting, and something like crypto, obviously, that changes every day. That's so volatile. Um, it's perfect for somebody who like me
Right.
that, you know, so yeah, I've been all in for years now and just trying to find my place in this community.
What do you think you've learned over the years? Like, I consider you an absolute OG vet of this space. And what do you think, like, along the journey has been the biggest lesson for you, or some of the biggest lessons in building multiple companies and working with big brands and taking risks on yourself? What did you learn and take from all that?
Oh man, yeah, so many things, so many stories, so many things to you know, lessons learned. Um, because it hasn't been an easy journey. Yeah, getting in early is
Mhm.
great, but you know, I've spent a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money in projects, in coins, bought a lot of NFTs that are now worthless. Um, for me, the thing is like get my hands dirty in a lot of different areas. To never really be so too much of a maxi, right? I mean, we saw it even throughout the last 10 years. It takes an open mind to get into Bitcoin, right? If you've been around long enough, you kind of have to think outside the box, so to speak. You kind of have to be open-minded to get into crypto at all. So it was always interesting to me that some people would be open-minded enough to be interested in Bitcoin, but they would be closed-minded in the fact that they're not open to other things like Ethereum or things that came after it. So it's like
Mhm.
these maxis. Anybody that says, you know, they're a Bitcoin maxi or Ethereum maxi, it's usually a red flag, because I think you need to be open to advanced, you know, the evolution of some of these things. I'll always be a Bitcoin holder. I'm definitely an Ethereum head. I'm an EVM, uh, you know, fan and builder, of
Mhm.
course. But try to always think, okay, where am I being a boomer in my thought process? You know, to my discredit, to my loss, I didn't care too much about what was going on in Solana. I just wasn't a fan. So I missed, you know, generational wealth potentially, right? So that's the biggest lesson, is like be open-minded and don't prejudge. Obviously you can't be in everything. So it's not, you know, it's not like I'm saying get involved in everything, because that's impossible. But do the best you can in like removing biases that build up over time and the tribalism. Um, so it's like get involved as in many communities as possible would be like the biggest bit of advice I would say.
I like that. I think that, you know, being a part of a lot of different communities, it can feel fragmented sometimes, like my attention's all over the place. What do you say to people wanting to maximize their signal to noise ratio, but, you know, who are out there in a lot of communities and they've got their head in the game and their ear to the ground? Is there a way that you found over the years to kind of see where is the most, you know, plus EV operation or situation, or any advice in that realm for someone, you know, kind of going down that same thought line of process there? Like, where are you being a boomer? Like, I love that thought because you know, I feel that.
It's hard, man, and it only comes after trial and error, after doing it for a long time, right? It's that's never perfect. Anybody
Mhm.
that just kind of lucks into it, um, you know, maybe it's not 100% luck, but luck has a big factor in it. It just comes from repetition. It's really hard to tell what the next big thing is, but it just comes from diving in, being patient, maybe waiting a cycle or two, to invest
Mhm.
real money. I would say first off, like set aside some money as like educational, where you know that like, hey, I'm not expecting any return. I'm actually expecting this to go to zero, but I'm going to put
Mhm.
it's easier now that we have layer twos, um, where it's like, hey, I'm going to put a couple bucks couple $100 over here. I want to put a couple $100 over there, just to kind of learn, okay, what does it mean to stake liquidity? Okay, what does it mean to, be farming these things? What does it mean to be, uh, you know, going after some of these airdrops? Um, I'd say, spend the first few months or even years just trying to understand this space. At the same time, you're building up your own personality. You're building up your own, uh, community, your own, identity on crypto Twitter and some of these other platforms like Forecaster. So like start with like a wide breadth, but then go deep in just a couple areas. What's been cool for me, I feel like I was really deep into DeFi. I became known as like the DeFi guy or the DeFi um, risk guy. I was thinking a lot about, okay, how do we analyze risk in some of these DeFi protocols? And then I thought there was an opportunity there, and I addressed that. And then I was really interested in NFTs in general because they were still kind of, it was early and small. And then it became like, oh no, generative art is where I need to be. So I went even deeper and was like, there's something special about gen art where it's like computer art existed before, code-based art existed before, but now that you can actually match it up with the blockchain and create like works of art that couldn't otherwise exist because it's using the hash from the chain to create the art. That's kind of struck a chord in me of like, okay, it's more than just uploading JPEGs. We're actually doing something unique with the code and the transaction. So I don't know. It's kind of like,
Right.
have patience, but then be opportunistic at the right times and know when to zoom in and when to zoom out.
Nice. That's really, really sound advice, man. I love that. I'm wondering your thoughts, like on the space now versus then, in a sense, like back when NFTs, in 2017, were just, like CryptoKitties clogging up the blockchain. Everybody's like, wait, what is this? What is an NFT? How does this work? And I think that got a lot of people to open their eyes to the technology being something that is so incredibly dope that really brought a lot of creatives in and got a lot of people excited about digital art and digital collectibles. So I'm curious on your thoughts of like, 2017 versus 2021 versus 2024 for NFTs and digital art. What do you think about those different phases? And as you've been a part of all of them, what do you see as the differences or the similarities, and where are we headed?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. I wish I knew where we were headed, but I just by chasing, my own interests and thing that I find curious, and then by being in this space for a long time, you learn to trust your gut and your intuition a little bit more. The things that I find most interesting are like the projects that use something that existed before, but like take it in a new direction. Um, So like we've always collected things, right? And now when it's applied to CryptoKitties, I saw that like, wow, we can have things that are provably scarce, provably unique. We can have things that I can prove ownership. This CryptoKitty is different from that one, and I can prove that it's in my wallet. So that was interesting to me. Not really from an investment perspective, but a like use case, proof of concept of like, wow, we can actually, we can build stuff here where you can prove uniqueness and scarcity and put the attributes on chain and do it in a fair way. So it was like really the early building blocks. Like as most people know, like they actually created the standard, the ERC 721 standard when they launched CryptoKitties. So they were literally creating it as they went. But it was still, it took over crypto Twitter at the time, right? It took over the layer one blockchain at the time because people couldn't, you know, started the gas started to cost quite a bit because people were minting and breeding CryptoKitties. So as fascinated as I was with CryptoKitties at the time, the real move would have been, a few months prior, to actually go deeper into CryptoPunks. So as early as you think you are, as like insightful as you think you are, there's probably somebody even earlier and probably making uh, an even better move. At the time, I was definitely aware of CryptoPunks in 2017 and 2018. But I liked the kitties because you could actually do something with it. It came with its own standard, and you can breed the kitties, and depending on the two that you choose to breed to mate, created a different output altogether, and you could play games. And there's this ecosystem building up around them. OpenSea had launched, and so they're like it seemed like this whole ecosystem was building around them, and I faded CryptoPunks for a while, until it kind of sank in, just like how interesting they were, because they were historical and all the things we love about CryptoPunks. But it took me a while for it to really sink in. Um, it's similar in a sense of like things that came before, but people using it in a different direction, right? Like I had launched my first NFT project in 2020, as I said, but it took me a while to get into, like, a while in quotes, of course, to get like why are chromie squiggles interesting, and it's more than just a colorful line. It took me several people hitting me over the head with it, of like, why these are actually unique and why these are interesting, because they're done in code, because the code depends on the blockchain hash to actually create the output. Um,
Right.
there's only a certain number of each type that will exist ever. Uh, and then in 21, I think it was, when Bored Apes came out, it took me a while to get it. It was like, okay, these are cool. It's not the most amazing art I've ever seen. Um, but going back to first principles, like I mentioned, people collect stuff, and with the art, it was for millennia, people have been collecting art, right, and wanting to put art on their
Yeah.
wall. So it's just like new tech applied to habits and human desires that we've had forever. And the same thing when it took me a couple of weeks, a couple of months to really get what Bored Apes was doing. Okay, yeah, they're using this tech that we like, but they're taking a different direction, and that's around like community and belonging. And I have a piece that belongs to this collection, but this one is mine. So yeah, another, I was able to get in pretty early into Bored Apes, and I bought one at a few ETH at the time, and
Nice.
was like, okay, I get what they're doing here. I can kind of play a few steps ahead. This is something that initially I didn't get, but when you start to think about, okay, what are these? You start to see signs that like didn't exist before. You start to see waves, and you start to see people that you respect show interest, and then that's kind of my opportunity of like, okay, I've seen this thing, I didn't get it, I'm going to do a deep dive, I'm going to figure it out, I'm going to pay attention to people that I respect in this space. um, I'm going to apply previous ways. It doesn't always, same thing doesn't always happen, but it
Mhm.
rhymes, right? History rhymes. So it was like, okay, I can see where this is going. So yeah, so that's it. It's just kind of figuring out what existed before, what are some habits and human desires and activity that we've done in the past. Um, so I made the bet of like doubling down on generative art. It didn't really pay off. I kind of expected generative art to take off even more, and when it's open and when it's brought on in an open platform on layer two, we launched some great projects, but like at some point, like the demand dried up. As now we're in the season
Mhm.
of meme coins and more social and more fun and silliness. Um, which, looking back, of course, we needed another, the art thing kind of ran its course, and we needed another period. We needed another cycle where it's just about having fun, and it's just about collecting art, and this the urge to make money and the hype is going to take over. And that's not necessarily a good or bad thing. That's just what happens every few years, right? And I think eventually it's going to come back around, and more people are going to discover the art, that more and more people are going to discover, the CryptoPunks and the Chromie Squiggles, and then potentially some things that I've launched. So that's kind of why in the last few months, Prohibition has kind of made this pivot to more fun, cheaper mints, editions rather than one of ones or collections, just to try to play play the game that's on the field, and cater to the demand that's currently out there. So what happens now, I'm not quite sure. That's kind of why we've been experimenting and throwing different ideas out there. It's really, it's anyone's guess. But I don't think like this whole meme scenario has run its course yet. I think people are always going to want to participate in the upside. I think all this meme stuff is a net positive for this space. The worst thing though is when people that don't know exactly what they're doing, they get involved and they lose a lot of money. I want to caution people and do what we can to protect that. But the people that are kind of know what they're doing, and they know this can be a casino. Like a lot of people know the risks and they're still getting involved. But I think there are some pockets, there are some areas where it looks bad. It reflects poorly on the space at large. But there's no way around that. It's always, 10 years ago, even now, people see it as like people are using, criminals are using the blockchain to send money, and it's only criminals that are doing it, right? That it's clearly not the case anymore, but that was the narrative. And now the narrative is, you even hear it on CNBC. It's like now the narrative is, oh, crypto's only meme coins. And we all know that that's not the case. But I think it's going to bring in a lot more people overall. And it's a market, it's decentralized. This is what we get when we want a decentralized activity, and people to be able to kind of do what they want with money, essentially. So I think we kind of survive this little hype cycle, and then it flows into whatever comes next, whether it's going deeper into social or gaming or back to art or something that touches on all these things, but is kind of takes it in a new direction. So I have no idea. That's kind of why I'm, built Venture Punk, which is this kind of product studio that tries to stay on top of things and tries to be thinking a few steps ahead, and launches experiments at a pretty quick pace. So that's it, man. We're just gonna keep grinding and keep taking shots on goal.
I love the attitude. When you're a part of the space for so long and you've seen different things unfold in different cycles, the way that I'm feeling this right now is like, as long as you're here and you survive and you keep playing the game, you're going to be around to see things evolve. You're going to be around to get the insights and know what the next step is. And it's not always about knowing what the next step is. Like you said, how CryptoKitties was creating as they went. I saw a quote from Jake Fried, who is an artist that I respect, have a ton of respect for, love his work. And he said, it's not like when you're doing a project, it's never about like knowing all the answers when you start. It's like you start the project and then you build stuff and you run into walls, and then you realize, okay, like this isn't the way that I'm going to actually go. So what I originally intended wasn't the right thing. So then it's like, all right, then you pivot a little bit and you know a little bit more. And it's like you're kind of like wading through the dark in a bit of a way, and then you're realizing like what to do in the moment because you're living it, you're breathing it, you have an ear to the ground. I think that kind of will take, for anyone listening, can take a lot of the pressure off for creators to know everything that they need to do all the time. So I like that perspective. As a builder yourself, how do you feel about that? Like creating as you go, like not having all the answers and just diving into it and figuring it out. Like you said, you take a lot of shots on goal.
Yeah, yeah. I'm changing up my audio here because my dog's going crazy.
Oh, it's okay, man.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, sweet.
Did you hear me on that last bit?
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's another hard one. I think that it's, when you get into the artist side of things, you have to mix art and science tells you that you should, it's a numbers game and you should get a bunch of stuff out there, but it's hard to do sometimes when you're more creative. And but when it comes to building, taking shots on goal, being open and experimental, um, it's really a habit that I've picked up from, the last couple decades of building software and building products that I want consumers to use. There was a movement maybe about 15, 20 years ago called Lean Startup, which is, your first idea probably isn't the winning idea, and what you need to do is
Right.
get your idea in front of users as quickly as possible, and you build this habit, you build this routine, or this, um, you put the scientific method into building products, and it's like, okay, here's what I
Yeah.
think people need, but I'm not quite sure until you start talking to people. So whether it's, you start talking to users, or you build a little prototype and put it in front of people, like you don't actually know until you put something in front of people. Um, so building mobile apps and building websites for a couple of decades now, so much experience around like, oh, I'm going to build something I think is cool, and you put it out there and nobody uses it or no one cares, and that's kind of
Right.
the worst thing that can happen, is that you wasted all this effort, you wasted so much money and time. So then you start to learn to build a more iterative approach, which is build something I think is cool, but build what's called the MVP, or the minimum viable product, and you build
Yeah.
something that is really just used to kind of show signal. And okay, if people, do X, Y, and Z, then I'm going to take that as a sign to go build the next version. So taking more of a scientific, rigorous
Mhm.
approach is helpful. It's not always possible. It's not possible in all the cases when there's something brand new that exists. When something that's like a little bit more creative exists, it's really hard to be completely scientific, completely data driven. I think a lot of people have taken it completely, too far. So I think there needs to be a balance, but like this foundation of, we don't know what people care about. We think we have an idea. People tell me they are interested in this, but really, what are they going to pay for? What are they going to mint? Or what are they going to tell their friends about? Um, and then it's balancing that with like your gut of being around for so long. Um, you kind of have this instinct. And the more I've done this, the more I've participated in a more creative space and launching NFTs. It's a similar approach. I don't consider myself an artist, but now I've created enough projects. I partnered with Snowfro in creating our Heart and Craft project.
Yeah.
So I'm like a creator now somehow. Um, and it's a little bit different. It's like, okay, I have this vision that needs to exist. Treating it like an art project um, may not, it's great, but you may not be positioning it the right way. You may not be targeting the right audience if all it was just purely visual. Treating it like a product wouldn't allow, the creativity, the art to take center stage. So again, I think a lot of these collections and projects, of course, are both, and sometimes it's more on the art side, sometimes it's less on the art side, but you need to kind of have a business brain and an artistic brain at the same time, and that's what we see these great creators and even these meme coin creators, right? They kind of know what the market's ready for, and they're quick to pivot. But yeah, you see, the Tyler Hobbs, the Snowfros, the Beeples, like they're both very gifted artistically, but they have they're paying attention. You know, they're very thoughtful in how they approach things, or they have a team around them to help them, you know, market this thing properly, position it properly, price it properly, take advantage of, you know, the social aspects. Um, so it's all just kind of one, you know, giant experiment. We're trying to figure it out as we go, and um, that part of what makes it so fun.
Hell yeah. I agree with so much of this. Like that attitude is just absolute. Like so from, you know, having an MVP and like treating it like a startup, like a lean startup when it comes to creating stuff in this space. I think a lot of people in the space don't necessarily have that background. There's definitely a good handful of people in the space that do. And I think that it'll be the thing that helps people be very successful in this space, even though, you know, like it's not a traditional space when it comes to like advertising or different things like that, right? Like we can't just buy ads to put our product in front of people in like traditional like Web 2, you know? You can just spend money on ads and kind of get an idea of what people are dealing with. But Web 3 is truly just like guerrilla marketing. It's like, you know, getting out there and like yourself, like the CEO, going and talking to every single person that you can to get feedback, putting stuff out there, like taking shots on goal, like you said. So I really do agree with all of that. So like creating as you go, I think for people in the space is so key. So I love that you said that, and I love your take there. I'm curious on what you think about Gen Art now, because I know you said kind of didn't pan out to the way that you were thinking. Of course, you know, the number go up technology, I think, is at the root of everything in this space. People want to see the number go up. But with Gen Art, like you were talking about, like using, then creating code that relies then on the hash of the blockchain at that given moment to create the output in creating art in that way. I think that's so awesome, you know. And when people wrap their head around that, they're like, damn, like, so it's not just like a squiggle that's like nostalgic and like, you know, looks cool. It's like actually a piece of art that was made in that exact moment that it can't be recreated, essentially. So I'm curious on your thoughts on Gen Art and like why you love Gen Art so much and where you think it's headed from where it's at right now.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, as mentioned, it took me a while, a few times looking at it and trying to figure it out and listening to people talk about it, before it finally clicked with me. And after that, you know, I picked up some, when I first kind of discovered it and really got into it and got it, I started minting some things, some of the early projects. I've never been one to like go mint a ton of things because I have that full confidence. It's more like I'm going to mint a few things here and a few things there. So, you know, I picked up a couple
Mm-hmm.
squiggles. I picked up a couple earlier projects here and there. Um, and it was fun. It was fun to mint these things because you didn't know what you were going to get. You know, vaguely kind of what maybe it might look like, or some of the traits you were kind of aware of. Um, but it wasn't until it actually minted uh, that you actually saw what you got. And this blind box or I don't know, gambling sort of you know, effect that it has to collecting art, to me, was a game changer. And it was just a fun experience and a little bit habit forming. And maybe I'll mint another one, or maybe I'll pay a little bit more because of the fun. And you know, minting something and then jumping into the Discord or Twitter to see what other people minted, and really, you know, rushing to look, okay, how rare did I get, or what trait, how frequent does this trait come up? Like that, to me, that was really fun. It was a fun kind of communal way of collecting as a group. And
Mm-hmm.
I wanted more people to experience that. That's why I went and launched Prohibition, is because, okay, now that L2s are getting more interesting and more accessible, and um, you know, it's now possible to do things at scale on the layer two. I want to bring the same excitement that I had minting generative art on art blocks a few years ago. I want to bring that to layer two so that more people essentially we can onboard more people into this stuff. Um, I decided to launch on Arbitrum, which is a great chain. Obviously, they kind of have their thing around, DeFi and gambling and gaming. It wasn't really set as this art chain. They're still trying to figure out, okay, how to bring art to Arbitrum. Um, and I think it was partly part of that. I thought, okay, we get a lot of people that have found success on the Arbitrum chain, and they'd want to kind of move some of their gains to NFTs and art, and be able to, there's also be this ability to kind of help grow the whole ecosystem. If we start participating, we start minting art on platforms within the Arbitrum ecosystem. But we didn't see too much of that. We saw a lot of people that loved art on art blocks on layer one and want to support some of these artists. We saw a lot of people bridge over from mainnet. We saw a lot of people come from FX hash, but we didn't see a lot of Arbitrum native people come. So, couple the friction that we added in terms of bridging assets over to a new chain with just the general market direction of maybe things finding, things going more towards the meme and to the social fi stuff. It became hard to sell art. I still believe that over time, the attention will come back to it, and we're still seeing some really great collections. Like the cream of the crop is going to sell out. Something that goes to art blocks, or if a top artist does something, it's still going to raise a bunch of ETH, and it's going to attract attention. But we're not quite there yet. We're like an open platform where someone just kind of getting their feet wet can launch a generative art project, create their own code, or work with the coder and launch something and have it be kind of a net new collection from a brand new artist that goes and attracts a bunch of collectors. It is kind of a process. You kind of have to understand and go through what I went through around, these are not just squiggly lines. It's actually written in code, a really elegant way to write the code of why, and it's not just code, it's actually, you know, deterministic based on the hash that gets created. So
Right.
there's so many chapters in this on-ramp. There's so many things that you kind of have to get. And I think it's going to take some time before the masses are ready for generative art. I still feel like there's something there. So whether it's just over time people get educated, or something like a squiggle comes up again and that drives a lot more attention, or we bring in new tech, maybe that's things that are a little bit more interactive, or things that tap into AR VR in a couple of years, or things that tap into AI, get AI more involved, and maybe there's more interest. Or for several different reasons, it could be a thing that comes back into favor. I don't know exactly what happens. I think the grails are always going to be grails, right? I think the generative art early projects that we saw on art blocks, like the squiggles and the fidenzas and the ringers, and all those top tier projects, I think they're always going to be looked at as grails, and people are always going to value them. They may go up and down in value, but I hope that people come around to see that, how interesting these things can be, and how what was interesting to me is that people that didn't consider themselves artists could now create art, because maybe they're not great in Photoshop or with a paintbrush, but they can use code to create some really interesting things. I've talked to a bunch of artists that loved the Prohibition platform, because now they could actually they could take their coding skills to create these really interesting things. And some of them went and did something on their own. Some of them partnered with an artist, and they said, "Hey, here are the tools we have. Here's what we can do with code." let's collab on something and take your vision for what could exist, and let me help, get it there. And that's the partnership that I had with Snowfro. He had this vision of hearts that were created in blocks, and he was actually building these things for a long time physically. And he showed me a bunch of pictures of some of these things that he's made physically with actual plastic
Wow.
blocks. And I said, this is awesome. Let's do it in code. So I learned how to create generative art. And I was okay. I was decent at JavaScript and front end web development, but I jumped in both feet, uh, P5JS and 3JS, which are JavaScript libraries to create this art, and really got into it, and worked with some of my friends, and asked around, asked ChatGPT, okay, how do I get it to do this? And was able to kind of help bring Snowfro's vision to life. So it's something totally cool that I think more and more people will discover over time, and more people will come to appreciate and hopefully collect at some point. Um, and yeah, that's all I'll say there.
Yeah. Wow. So you basically learned how to do generative art. And how did you use books? Did you get, like you said, ChatGPT, I know, but I'm familiar with P5J that JS. I don't know how to code, but I've always been interested in generative art and how to make generative art. And I'm just like probably like a 2 out of 10 on skill set of using code. So, like, how, for somebody listening who is very interested in generative art or making art with code, where would you start?
Yeah, I recommend people start with P5JS. Just Google P5, and the official website is comes with a lot of great tutorials. There's like an on-chain code tool that makes it really easy, and they have a bunch of examples. So just Google P5JS.
Wow.
I bought some books, but it was even more helpful to just jump in. And then once you kind of have some of the basics down, maybe even before then, but I would say take advantage of um, firstly Chat GPT, and say, hey, I want to write a script, or I want to
Nice.
create art in P5. I want to put a blue box. I want to put a blue circle on a red square, or whatever, something stupid like that, right? And then it'll actually write the code to do something that easy. And then read it over and figure out, okay, what's the code that's creating the blue circle, and what's the code that's creating the red square, and then
Smart.
start to do some things, and then start to layer it in. Okay, now I want that blue square to change colors every time somebody clicks it, or I want it to every 5 seconds it spins around. Um, and then you can see, okay, by adding this, that made it spin. Um, that of course is not going to win any
Smart.
art awards, right? But it helps you figure out how to do stuff. And then we used to, in writing code and learning to write code before ChatGPT, you would hit up Stack Overflow and some of these communities and message boards. But now all that information is in ChatGPT and on some of these other AI platforms. So you can get your answer immediately, and you can do trial and error of like, hey, that didn't work. Can we try again? Or what if we did it that way? Or another thing you can do is, inspect the code of a project that you do like. It's fairly easy to find
Smart.
the code of the squiggle. So you can paste that into GPT, or put that in a doc and say, okay, how are they getting it to change colors? Or how come this one is more purple and blue, and this one I see the full spectrum? And you can actually start to see that. Another cool thing to do is like ask ChatGPT to show comments, because when developers and artists export their
Mhm.
code, there's no comments in the code, because they want it as lean as possible. But you could actually ask AI to add inline comments, and it'll tell you, okay, this line is doing this. Okay, this line is doing that. Um, so
Wow.
there's a bunch of techniques that you kind of pick up. and it's interactive. Yeah, you can buy books. Yeah, you can watch YouTube videos, and there's a bunch of really great YouTube videos out there that are really helpful. But in terms of like uh, your biggest return on your time is these interactive platforms like ChatGPT, where you can just like ask it questions and you can see outputs immediately. So that would be the biggest thing that I've learned. That was really helpful for me starting out. Of course, you hit a wall, right, and it can't do some of the more complicated things, and it starts to hallucinate. But at that point, you have a general idea of what you need to do and what you can do, and then it's up to you to figure out how to take it the rest of the way. Um, if you don't want to take it the rest of the way, you at least now have a vocabulary, or you have uh, an understanding of how it works, so that you can talk to an actual developer, or you can talk to someone else and now get feedback in real time. So that was that. You can hear I'm passionate about it, because it was from like it was such a it was like step out of my comfort zone to get that deep into it, and to um, kind of switch over into this creative mode. It was so fun, and um, I would love to find other ways to continue to do things like that, or say shave off part of my day every day, or pick a day every week to get more creative like that, because that was really rewarding, and that's something that I think I carried through the life of the Prohibition Project. Is more people need to create, more people need to make art. It doesn't have to be something that goes to a museum, but just the act of creating is so freeing and exciting. And so many times I've created something and sent it to friends, and they said, "Whoa, you did this!" And it's such a fun thing to do. Um, and it goes beyond just generative art, but all types of art forms. So I would love to see more and more people, later in their careers potentially, spend more time, creating art. And I think, not only does this technology help folks like that, sell their art, or find collectors, but hopefully we're able to kind of remove the middleman, and we're able to, get to the point one day. This is like way out in the future, and we're talking like uh, um, things like universal income and things like that. But long term, I would love it if more people got into creating art, if not for anything, just to like do it.
So I want to put a pin in the universal income conversation because I'd love to touch on that and your thoughts on that. But I want to ask you a question about art collectibles, Gen art on layer two. So like right now, the space hasn't, in my opinion, maybe you have a different opinion, but hasn't really like warmed up to layer twos for Gen art nearly as much as the collectors who collected on art blocks originally, or hold a Fidenza, people that are or like dreamed of holding a Fidenza. It doesn't seem like L2s have really taken off for Gen art. There's been some collections that have been large scale on L2s, but I'm curious your thoughts on art collectibles and Gen art on L2s versus like mainnet.
Yeah. Um, I think that at least for me, and what I've seen is that like we're just now at a point where people have more confidence in layer twos. Even as early as a
Mhm.
year ago, like there wasn't a ton of activity outside of like some early adopters, moving assets over to Arbitrum and other chains. Like I think we just celebrated Base, 1 year anniversary of Base Network. Um,
Wow.
so it's really only in the last few months that like it's built up this adoption and support and activity. Uh, I think for these higher value collections, like you want something that where the focus is on security and longevity, right? A
Hmm.
year ago, you know, I if you had the ability to like move your squiggle to base, like no one would have done it. Yeah, it's cool. I can do things and I can maybe lend with it and send it around, but like base may not be around forever. You know, that may have been the thought a year ago. So I'm not
Right.
going to do that. But now, uh, and you know, the thought was L2s are great, maybe just for like short-term farming or playing games or
Yeah.
more, you know, social networking. But now things are starting to change, and we're starting to see more and more, obviously, volume and total value locked on layer twos like base. And we're starting to see artists experiment more. One, because like, what else are you going to do? Like, that's where some activity is. But when we see this ecosystem of something like base and like this community, like Farcaster pay a lot of attention to it, and we can have this minting experience more like a social experience. We start to see more interesting collections over there, and some that are like tied to communities. You know, the base punks and some of these early
Right.
base collections, like they can only exist on base because that's part of the narrative, that's part of the story. So that's why we're seeing some higher values, higher floors to some of these projects.
Hmm.
And it comes with the so it's education, it's development, it's you know, the story that plays out, a lot of different reasons why we see more there. Um, it may be the case where higher value things emerge on as kind of a rule on some of these platforms because there's clearly now a market for them. Um, we have more confidence in their existence in a few years that we may see more and more high value NFTs on a layer two. But I still have a feeling that especially these grails will stay on layer one, where you know these things could be 6 figures, 7 figures, 8 figures in value down the road. We want something as stable, as secure as possible. So it really is kind of a use case dependent thing. Obviously, when it comes to minting, and you're minting, you know, a $20 NFT, you're not going to go to layer one where the gas might be $20. You're going to go to something like Base or Arbitrum where you're going to pay a few cents in
Hmm.
gas. Uh, so yeah, it's TBD where this all goes, but I think it makes a lot of sense where some of these more fun, interactive, cheaper mints are happening, like where community now is kind of built in, like on Base. Um, so yeah, it'll be exciting to see where it all goes.
Yeah, I love to see bass, getting more popular in the sense that artists have been able to create on there and to find more collectors. I've recently been minting on base pretty much exclusively. I haven't minted on ETH for probably 6 to 8 months.
Hmm.
And I or ETH mainnet rather. And it's simply because the cost to mint on base is virtually zero.
Yeah.
And that's where all the collectors are that I see on the feed right now, is mostly collecting on base. And that's cool. I love that. And that's why I have been experimenting on base. And, like you said, you're starting to see artists experimenting more on base. And I think though at the same time, ETH mainnet though also is like being viewed as an OG. It's like, okay, you minted it on mainnet and maybe it has more significance in that regard now. So maybe the collections that have been minted on mainnet also hold more historical value. So I think it's really cool though overall that like art itself is spreading to these different platforms. Base definitely seeming to be the hot spot right now for artists. But I'm curious to see too how the future unfolds with Base as like for example, Jesse Pollock,
Hmm.
he went on a honeymoon, and it's kind of like everyone looks to Jesse Pollock as like the leader of the base movement in a sense, almost like I'm curious on your thoughts on that. Like if a movement is kind of based around one person and that person then goes away and it kind of then just creates a, like, you don't see people like being led in the same way. Like, is it strong enough? Is it gonna hold the test of time? You know, that's what I wonder. Because I saw, you know, he went on his honeymoon, and that's amazing. Happy for him. And but then the kind of the energy around base had diminished, it felt like.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's a great point. That's certainly interesting. You know, we've been saying that since the beginning of Ethereum too, with Vitalik, and you know, at the
True.
time, you know, at the time it launched, Vitalik was literally standing over the shoulders of developers who were building the Ethereum network. And then it was like,
Yeah.
okay, as he kind of takes more of a step back, is it going to be as interesting? Is it going to be as successful? You know, obviously you have the thing with Bitcoin and Satoshi being anonymous. There is no,
Right.
you know, founder that we can point to, or that can rug, or that can be, you know, can do something illegal,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden, you know, shed a bad light on the network. So that's been something we've been thinking about for a long time, and it is really interesting that you know, we're still talking about it. Same thing with like a lot of these projects. They're not decentralized because if a founder leaves or gets caught doing something dumb, it ruins the whole thing. So I think I think the case is that like these leaders are great at the beginning to kind of spread the vibes and give, you know, confidence to humans that this is worth paying attention to, and like lead the team forward. But at some point, things have to get decentralized. We always talk about um, the scale of decentralization. Decentralization's on a scale. Initially, we don't want it to be decentralized because that's chaos. But eventually, we want it to be decentralized, or that's uh, you know, a dictatorship. So there is this kind of like it's a step process. So yeah, it really is interesting, the timing of it all. I didn't notice quite. I know you're definitely plugged in to the base side of things, and I am as well as a builder. Um, but it's interesting that like obviously we want people to go on vacation. You know, we want to have people to be balanced out.
Of
Um,
course, of course.
but it is interesting, and I think that like, you know, hopefully he's put a team in place. And if we all think about it, like the reason we're in base is not for one person, it's for the tech,
Yeah,
for the
totally.
community. But base is definitely a unique situation, and part of the reason why I was a little bit hesitant initially is because even though I'm such a fan of Coinbase, and I feel it's like we're only here in this capacity because of Coinbase and the work that they've done, and I'm a shareholder. But like even then, it's like, do we want a blockchain run by a public company? Like, what if their shareholders demanded that they drop?
True.
So that was really hard for me to grasp. Like most of these other L2s are built by, you know, transition to a DAO or foundation or whatever. But do we want? But to their credit, um, shows that like how Coinbase is just kind of in a league of their own in terms of adoption. Um, to their credit, they've done the right things. And listening to Jesse speak, he's saying the right things, in my opinion, of like how you go from there to you know, a more open network. So I don't know. To me,
Mhm.
the team is doing the right things, and time will tell, of course. But I'm definitely bullish.
I'm bullish too. I'm bullish on the sense of artists being able to create for basically $0. Like, somebody can get into NFTs and start putting their digital art. Maybe they make digital art already, and then they learn about base and they can get onboarded and sell their first piece at without spending any money, basically, which is
Mm-hmm.
incredible, using tools like Prohibition or Manifold or Zora, and being able to get in the world of it, which is so cool. And I think that's what we want, is more people getting involved, more people learning about this and creating that movement. Like on chains, like the on-chain movement for base, their goal is to onboard like 1 million people, right? Or maybe it's even more than that, maybe it's 100 million. or something like that.
Mhm.
But I remember that, like, I heard that quote, and they're like, our goal is to onboard so and so many millions of people into the on-chain world, and they're pushing that forward. So whatever we want to criticize as a community or whatever, they are doing something. They're the ones taking shots on goal with that. They're putting their necks out for that, and I respect that, and I love being a part of it so far. So I want to also touch on this. We're talking a little bit about ChatGPT. Personally, I use ChatGPT all the time. I think I saw a statistic, and I can't get quoted on this, but it was like between 20 to 30% of men over 30 years old are using ChatGPT. And that's incredible, because to me, I don't even really go to Google as much anymore. I more so go to ChatGPT to get answers for stuff. I use ChatGPT to track a lot of stuff, like from fitness and nutrition to just doing math on complicated ideas, or asking for help in so many different ways. So it's incredibly helpful for me. And my sister was telling me how she's like, yeah, I downloaded ChatGPT on mom's phone, so my mom. And my mom was telling me how she's using ChatGPT now, and she uses it for different things. And she's like not super, she's like, I think 50 something. So basically, like, it's interesting to kind of see how that's unfolding, and how more and more people are starting to use it, and how much value there is there. Do you think that AI is going to replace just most people's jobs in the world, and then we are going to trend towards some sort of universal basic income? Like, what's your take on that?
Oh man, um, I think that sounds amazing. Personally, to be able to do what you want to do
Right?
versus like what you're forced to do, and I still think that there is ways that we can add value to the world, um, and be productive. Um, Honestly, would love that to happen in my lifetime. I think that would be amazing. I'm I don't consider myself a big brain in this area, so like I don't want to say anything that's like that's totally insane. But like I'm just
Mm.
excited for that, and bullish on that. Not to force it right away, but be open to some of these things. And it takes certain generations to die off, and certain more open-minded people to kind
Right,
of
right.
take the reins, so to speak. And
Hmm.
but yeah, I mean, if you think about where we've been just in the last few years, and how far tech has advanced in the last couple decades, it's at a exponential pace, right? And then
Of
it's only
course,
going to
yeah.
get faster. If you kind of extrapolate that out of just in a couple decades where we'll be, you're probably underestimating some things in terms of like where tech will be, where AI will be. That it doesn't take a giant leap to think that so many jobs will be replaced, and like that's a good thing in a lot of cases, meaning that we'll find a way to um, like have it be optional, where yeah, if you wanted to keep, for a long time we're going to need people in different capacities. Maybe it's not the teacher that stands in front of the class in person, but it's the teacher that manages the bots that help train the people, or whatever. I don't even know, that's a dumb example, but like I
Well,
do
no, I
think
know where
that
you're
over
getting at.
time
Yeah.
we're going to get there, and the jobs are going to look totally different. And I think that it's going to free up time where maybe we will have a 4-day work week, or a 4-hour work week, or whatever. And
Mm.
things are going to look totally different. And that means more time to think, and more time to be curious, and more time to create art, and more time to hang out with the people you love. And I think all in all, that like how could that be like anything other than just amazingly bullish for you know for everybody. So I
For humanity,
for humanity, yeah, I think that's,
as we know it.
I would love to see something like that in our lifetime. That would be amazing.
Well, I looked up the launch date for ChatGPT. They only launched less than 2 years ago. So November
Really?
30th, 2022. So that's absolutely insane just to wrap my head around that, because we're on GPT 4.0 as of this recording here. And the jump to GPT 5 is just going to be like orders of magnitude ahead of where we're at from what I'm hearing and different things that I've like watched and listened to. So in less than 2 years, we're already at GPT 4 and then 4.0, which is like the optimized version of 4,
Hmm.
and how powerful that it is and how much that it can do for people and how much it helps people. And like, imagine that getting more and more advanced. It's going to be a no-brainer that it will be doing the jobs of people that they don't necessarily need to sit inside of a toll booth and collect quarters. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there'll be easier ways for these types of things to get done. I mean, even today, listening to Spotify, the next song comes on and it's like, hey, this is DJ X. And I'm like, wait, what? And I look at my phone and it's an AI DJ that Spotify has that bases off what you've been listening to for the last 7 days or whatever, or however amount of time, and then gives you songs based off that. And it actually like narrates it. It's like, all
Mhm.
right, like next up is going to be like this person, this person. We're going to switch things to this. Like, we're going to switch the vibe. Very, very interesting. And I feel like we're like our generation essentially here is getting to really dig into AI and get to use AI, not just for household type things or utility based things, but even just for art. Things like art is so interesting, and it's just beautiful to think about like leveraging this tool. There's a lot of doom and gloom around like AI will take over the world and this and that. So of course I always say please when I talk to my chat GPT, but I think that it's not necessarily like people will, it's not going to be like that. It's not going to be like Terminator. And it's not even going to be like, oh, it's smart people that are using AI. It's more like just going to be like, if this can make things easier for humanity, and it doesn't have to be this like doom and gloom type scenario, but instead it could be something like, wait, like what if we did have more time to make art? We did have more time to spend with loved ones, and life wasn't so much of a grind because so much gets outsourced to GPTs. It's just an interesting vision. So I know it's kind of
Yeah,
separate from the art and all of that, but
that's interesting. I've got
appreciate your perspective there.
yeah, I've got two kids. They just had birthdays.
Oh, nice.
They're
Congrats, man.
they're 13 and 15, so they're teenagers now. They're older. And my son, who's now in high school, so I have to think about, okay, how does ChatGPT play into this? And they're learning. So it's last year or whenever it came out, November of 22, I was actually showing my son ChatGPT and how to use it and like how to ask it questions. And then now
Nice.
teachers are figuring it out. And I recently told him, I'm like, use it as often as you can, as often as you think it's useful, but don't depend on it. Never cheat.
Yeah.
Like if a teacher says don't use ChatGPT, then don't use ChatGPT. Use it as a tool, not to give you the answer, but help you find the answer. And I told him how I used it to do how I've used it in certain contexts and in creating the generative art. It was more like, okay, how do you make something do this instead of like, here's my problem. Can you solve it for me? Um, but I think it's going to be,
Right.
like people, you're not, in math classes at certain levels, you're not allowed to use a calculator until you get older and the problems get harder. Then you are able to use a calculator. I think it's going to be the same thing, at certain classes, certain levels, like you're not going to be able to use AI, but at some point you are going to be able to use anything in your power to solve this problem or to do this project. So yeah, with everything, it's balance, but I'm generally a little bit more forward thinking in terms of like, yeah, let them use whatever's at their disposal.
I love that take there on like, it's kind of like being in math class and you don't use the calculator when you're just doing addition, subtraction, division, multiplication type stuff. But then as you level up to like calculus, everyone's got their special TI 80 whatever,
Hmm.
and then you're leveraging the calculator. So like using AI to be able to get answers, but not like having it just do it all for you, but like it's a tool, just like Google's a tool. it's a really powerful tool. And I think being able to use it that way, that's such a great example that you're setting for your kids like that, like getting them to understand it in that way. That's really cool, man. And happy birthday to them as well, or happy belated. So
Yeah,
one
thanks.
last thing. Yeah, hell yeah. One last thing here. I wanted to ask you this question as we kind of wrap up here. And, you know, what do you think your vision is for the space in the next 5 years to 10 years?
These are always the hard questions, man. I It's so hard to predict, because even though I was interested in NFTs, I wouldn't have predicted, the NFT wave in 21. Even though I was interested in DeFi, like I wouldn't have predicted the waves. Right now, I think we're in this like inflection point, or this like part of the cycle where like no one really knows. I mean, I bet someone out there is building the thing that takes off and everyone's excited about. But I don't know. I'm maybe it's just me personally. I'm kind of in this like plateau of like waiting to see where this is all going, and wanting to help push things forward, but like not no obvious direction in sight for me right now. I obviously am bullish on things that we've talked about, art in general. I'm bullish on decentralized social. I'm bullish on base and a lot of other L2s. Um, I'm just like you can never count out like uh, you never count out memes and stories. So I want to I could see us getting even crazier with tokens, and like everyone getting a token. I can see it's getting crazy with like everybody gets in a layer 2, or everybody else gets their own layer 3 or whatever. I was I was always like questioning the need for a layer 3, but once you
Right.
start building and interacting and doing stuff on layer 2, like real quickly you're going to be like, well, we can't do this forever, or we can't really scale past this without a layer 3. So as silly as it sounds, um, I think we may see some interesting things happen on layer 3, and we'll start to get some adoption there. Um, it's going to be things that like don't shock us, but are like super compelling. But like looking backwards, we'll be able to connect the dots, right? Like, oh, of course DeFi took off because now we can do X, Y, and Z. You can only say that in retrospect. Oh, of course NFTs took off because of A, B, and C. It'll be the same thing. So I don't know. A lot of times the answer to this is like gaming, but I it feels like that's the answer still. But it's after these last couple of years of saying that, like there's some interesting things, some outliers, but I don't know if that's going to be the next big thing, or at least that's not as interesting for me personally these days. Um, I'm
Mhm.
really big. I'm really interested on Farcaster. I'm still waiting to get like, like my super geeky friends over there. Because there's a lot of really cool things we can do there.
Yes.
But
With
there's
frames
still,
and things like that.
yeah, I'm really excited about what's happening there. But it's just like, maybe it's just a matter of time, and a matter of like finding the right thing that's gonna capture a lot of people's attention. But I love what Farcaster and that community is doing, and so many great builders building over there, and not really getting the money or um, the investment that they probably could be had they were building elsewhere. But they're doing it because it's something that they're passionate about, because of um, certain incentives are aligned over there. So
Uh-huh.
anyways, yeah, so SocialFi, it'll be interesting to see what other new tech kind of get involved, obviously with AI, um, uh, getting more on-chain experiences that maybe are attached to things like AR and VR. I think this whole move to like push everything on chain summer, we've lost the meaning of like what on chain actually is, because It used to be things
Yeah.
that were just like totally completely on chain, like there's no off-chain component. But now it's like anybody that's actually doing things with the blockchain is technically is we call it on chain. That's an interesting thing where things are going. I think it's all positive. But
Hmm.
I think more and more things will be going quote unquote on chain. I'd love to see more and more of my day-to-day experiences be happening on chain. More of my assets be stored or recorded on chain. Um, you have this like digital identity that's tied to a wallet essentially that goes wherever I go. And there have been so many cases where, I show up to an event or I, purchase something and it's like, man, it'd be so easy to just tie that to my wallet and have that forever tied to me. So I think more and more IRL experiences are going to have this component. Um, I don't know that never have the answers, but I have this like posture of continuing to build and explore and experiment. And I've been, I'm grateful that, I have investors behind me and supporters and partners and artists who have worked with me to allow me to keep experimenting where, we don't always get it right, but hopefully it's still kind of helping push this place forward.
Absolutely. I love that. I think you've got a great overall perspective of like that you know that you don't know. And I think it takes a lot to know that you don't know. And this space is for sure, things come out of nowhere. I agree that SocialFi is so like it's so promising. Like it makes so much sense. And Warpcast, I think, is ahead of its time even right now.
Mhm.
And it's incredible. Like once it clicks for people, you become so purple pilled. It's just like it just makes so much sense. Myself, I haven't been using it that much over the last few weeks. I've been more active on X, but for a while there, I ran up my profile to like 6,000 something followers and super, super active. I think the DGen incentive was really helpful, but
Mhm.
also like just what is possible there, like minting in frame, for example, you just post a manifold link and then you can literally have someone buy your art as they're scrolling your feed in 2 clicks. That is like super, super powerful. And for me, really clicks heavily. So it's things like that with, SocialFi and having the identity of your wallet linked to your social identity. I'm very bullish on that. I think that we are in the absolute caveman stages of that. And it's going
Mhm.
to be incredible to see what happens in the future. So I totally agree with you. Man, it's been an
Man.
amazing talking to you, amazing getting to ask you all these questions. I can't wait to listen back on this. And I've been taking notes here left and right, just with different things you've been saying. And I, um, I really appreciate you coming on here, man, and getting to chat. And I think that you're an amazing person for this space, and you truly are someone who's here in it five the art and in it for pushing the space forward. Which that's what's going to make this space great is all of us taking the responsibility and taking the risks and taking the shots on goal to push the space forward. So, ton of respect for you, man, and
Awesome,
thanks
man.
again for coming on here.
Yeah, thanks so much, man. That's a great conversation. Really appreciated. It's always fun to, dig into the past, but also look forward. So yeah, great chat, man. Really appreciate it.
Hell yeah, man. Well, I'll have this episode posted shortly, and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks for everything, man. And let's stay in touch. Let's talk soon and keep crushing it with Prohibition. Keep crushing it with everything that you got with Venture Punk. Keep pouring your heart in. The space is lucky to have you, man.
Thanks so much, man. Really appreciate that. That means a lot. Thanks, man.
Of course, man. All right, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'll see you soon, brother.
All right. Thanks so much.
Later, man.